The evening sky had turned a deep purple as Tanya Wilson gathered her papers from her desk. As one of the city's hardest-working attorneys, late nights were nothing new to her. She specialized in helping people who couldn't afford expensive lawyers, and today's case had been particularly demanding. A single mother of two had been facing eviction, and Tanya had managed to get her more time to find a new place. Small victories like this kept her going. "You should head home, Tanya. It's almost 9, her colleague called from across the office. Tanya nodded, rubbing her tired eyes. "Just finishing up. Have a good night." After locking up the office, she walked to her car, a sensible blue sedan she'd bought 3 years ago after her old car finally gave out. The drive home would take about 20 minutes, and she was looking forward to a hot shower and maybe a glass of wine before bed. The streets were quiet as she drove through downtown, the buildings casting long shadows in the streetlights. She turned on the radio, humming along to an old soul song. Her mind wandered to tomorrow's appointments and the stack of cases waiting on her desk. So deep in thought was she that the sudden flash of blue and red lights in her rearview mirror startled her. Tanya checked her speed. She wasn't speeding. Maybe a taillight was out. She signaled and pulled over to the side of the road, her heart beginning to beat a little faster. As a black woman, she'd had enough uncomfortable encounters with police to feel a familiar knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. She did everything by the book, turned off the engine, placed her hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen, and waited. In her rearview mirror, she saw 2 officers exit their patrol car. One was tall and broad-shouldered with a crew cut, the other shorter with a mustache. Neither was smiling. The taller officer approached her window. His nameplate read, "Officer Daniels." She rolled down her window and offered a polite smile. "Good evening, officer. Did I do something wrong?" Officer Daniels didn't return her smile. "License and registration, please." "Of course." Tanya spoke calmly, narrating her movements. "I'm going to reach for my purse now to get my license." She moved slowly, retrieving her wallet from her purse on the passenger seat. "And now I'll get my registration from the glove compartment." She handed over the documents, maintaining her composure despite the officer's stern expression. He examined her license, then looked at her with narrowed eyes. "Ms. Wilson, do you know why we pulled you over tonight?" "No, sir, I don't." "Was I speeding?" The second officer had circled around to the passenger side and was shining his flashlight into her car, peering through the windows. "Your vehicle matches the description of one used in a series of robberies in this area," Officer Daniels said, his tone accusatory. "Where are you coming from right now?" "I'm coming from my office downtown. I'm an attorney with the Community Legal Aid Center. I was working late on a case." The officer's expression didn't change. "An attorney, huh? And what kind of cases do you handle?" The question felt irrelevant, but Tanya maintained her professional demeanor. "I work primarily with low-income clients on housing and employment issues." The second officer, whose nameplate read Officer Russo, tapped on her passenger window. "Ma'am, what's in that bag on your back seat?" Tanya glanced back. "That's my gym bag. It has my workout clothes and shoes." Officer Daniels handed back her license and registration, but his demeanor shifted to something more aggressive. "Step out of the vehicle, please." "May I ask why?" Tanya felt her heart rate increasing but kept her voice steady. "Step out of the vehicle now, ma'am." His hand moved to rest on his holster, a subtle but clear threat. Tanya's mind raced. She knew her rights, but she also knew the reality of being a black woman alone with 2 increasingly hostile officers. She decided to comply while continuing to assert herself verbally. "I'm going to step out as you've asked, but I'd like to understand what's happening." She unbuckled her seatbelt and slowly opened the door. As soon as she was out of the car, Officer Daniels grabbed her arm and spun her around, pushing her against the vehicle. "Hands behind your back," he ordered. "This is unnecessary," Tanya said, her voice finally betraying her fear. "I've done nothing wrong." "We'll determine that," Officer Russo said, approaching with handcuffs. "We have reason to believe you may be involved in criminal activity." The cold metal of the handcuffs bit into her wrists as they tightened them, unnecessarily tight, she thought, wincing in pain. "Listen carefully," she said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "I am an attorney. I know my rights. You have no probable cause to search me or my vehicle." Officer Daniels leaned in close. "Well, look at you with all your fancy legal talk. I bet your kind of attorney has all sorts of criminal clients, doesn't she? Maybe you picked up some of their habits." The implication was clear, and the knot in Tanya's stomach tightened. "My kind of attorney? What exactly do you mean by that?" "You know exactly what I mean," he replied, his voice low. Officer Russo was already searching her car, pulling items from her glove compartment and rifling through her purse. "This is an illegal search," Tanya called out. "I do not consent to this." "We have reasonable suspicion," Officer Daniels replied, though he didn't elaborate on what that suspicion was based on. Tanya noticed a couple walking on the other side of the street, watching the scene unfold. She made eye contact with them, silently pleading for them to witness what was happening. The couple slowed their pace but didn't stop. "Officer, I'm going to reach for my phone in my pocket." "I'd like to call my colleague," Tanya said, trying to shift her handcuffed hands. "No, you're not," Officer Daniels said, grabbing her arm roughly. "You don't get to make calls right now." "I have the right to make a phone call," she insisted. "You have the right to remain silent," he countered. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Tanya felt a chill run through her. "Are you arresting me? On what charges?" "We're detaining you for questioning related to a series of robberies in the area." Officer Russo emerged from her car holding her gym bag. "There's an expensive watch in here," he announced. "Where'd you get this?" "That's my brother's watch. He asked me to get it repaired. I have the receipt in my wallet." Officer Daniels smirked. "Sure you do." Tanya took a deep breath, trying to center herself. "The receipt is in the zippered pocket of my wallet. You can check it." Officer Russo rummaged through her wallet but didn't comment on whether he found the receipt or not. "We're going to take you to the station for further questioning," Officer Daniels announced, guiding her toward the patrol car. "This is harassment," Tanya said firmly. "I want to speak to your supervising officer." "You can do all the talking?" "You want at the station," he replied, pushing her head down as he placed her in the back seat of the patrol car. As the door slammed shut, Tanya tried to control her rising panic. Her car would be left here, probably towed. Her phone was still in her pocket, but her hands were cuffed behind her back. She wondered if she could manage to press the emergency button without them noticing. Through the partition, she heard the officers talking as they got into the front seat. "Bet she's not really a lawyer," Officer Russo was saying. "Probably just says that to sound important." "We'll see," Officer Daniels replied. "Run her name through the system when we get to the station. If she's clean, we can always let her go. With a warning." "A warning for what?" Tanya called out. "I've broken no laws." They ignored her, continuing their conversation as if she couldn't hear them. "These people always think they know the law better than we do," Officer Russo said with a chuckle. Tanya closed her eyes, trying to remember every detail of the encounter. The officers' names and badge numbers, the time, the location, every word they'd said. When this was over, she would file the most detailed complaint the department had ever seen. As the patrol car pulled away from the curb, she managed to angle her body so she could press her phone's power button 5 times in succession. The emergency SOS signal that would send her location to her emergency contacts and start recording audio. If nothing else, there would be a record of what happened next. The handcuffs dug into her wrists as the patrol car accelerated, and Tanya steeled herself for whatever was coming. They didn't know who she was yet, but they would. And when they did, things would change very quickly. The police station buzzed with activity despite the late hour. Officers shuffled papers at their desks while others led handcuffed individuals to processing. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over everything, making the already uncomfortable situation feel even more sterile and intimidating. Officer Daniels gripped Tanya's arm firmly as he guided her through the station. She held her head high, making eye contact with everyone they passed. She wanted witnesses. She wanted people to see her, a professionally dressed woman in handcuffs being treated like a criminal. "Where are you taking me?" Tanya asked, her voice clear and controlled, despite her racing heart. Interrogation, Officer Daniels replied curtly. Officer Russo is bringing your personal items. They walked down a narrow hallway lined with doors. Officer Daniels stopped at one marked Interview Room 3, opened it, and directed Tanya inside. The room was small, with a metal table bolted to the floor and 3 chairs. A large mirror occupied one wall, obviously a two-way observation window. Sit, he ordered, pointing to a chair facing the mirror. Tanya remained standing. I'd like these handcuffs removed, please, and I want to make my phone call. Officer Daniels smirked. You'll get your phone call when we're ready. The cuffs stay on for now. There's no legal basis for keeping me restrained. I've been cooperative and posed no threat. He ignored her, walking around the table. Sit down, Ms. Wilson. Tanya weighed her options. Continuing to stand might escalate the situation unnecessarily. She decided to comply physically while continuing, to assert herself verbally. I'm sitting as requested, she said, lowering herself into the chair with difficulty due to the handcuffs. But I want it noted that I'm being held against my will without being charged with any crime. Noted, he said mockingly, taking the seat across from her. The door opened and Officer Russo entered with Tanya's purse and gym bag. He placed them on the table but out of her reach. Found anything interesting? Officer Daniels asked his partner. Still looking, Officer Russo replied, beginning to empty the contents of her purse onto the table. Her wallet, keys, lip balm, a pack of tissues, a protein bar, and various receipts formed a small pile. Stop going through my belongings, Tanya demanded. You have no warrant. Officer Russo ignored her, opening her wallet and examining her ID. Cards. His eyebrows raised slightly as he pulled out her Bar Association card. Huh. Looks like she might actually be a lawyer, he said to his partner, though he didn't hand the card to Officer Daniels for verification. Being a lawyer doesn't mean you can't break the law, Officer Daniels replied, leaning back in his chair. In fact, some might say it makes you more likely to know how to get away with it. Tanya took a deep breath. I'd like to know exactly what crime you suspect me of committing. As we told you, there have been several robberies in the area where we stopped you. The suspect drives a blue sedan similar to yours. That description matches thousands of cars in this city, Tanya pointed out. And you still haven't explained what specific evidence led you to target me. The two officers exchanged glances. Let's cut to the chase, Officer Daniels said, leaning forward. We know things happen in certain neighborhoods. Drug deals, stolen, goods changing hands. Maybe you're not directly involved, but maybe you know people who are. Tanya stared at him in disbelief. Are you suggesting I'm connected to criminal activity simply because of where I work? Or is it because of something else? Neither officer responded to her implication. If you cooperate with us, Officer Russo said, his tone suddenly friendlier, this whole situation could go away quickly. We're just looking for information. Information about what, exactly? Drug dealers in your neighborhood, for starters, Officer Daniels said. We know they're there. You must see them working where you do. The reality of the situation became crystal clear to Tanya. This wasn't about any robbery. This was a fishing expedition. They'd pulled her over because of how she looked and where she was driving, and now they were trying to pressure her into becoming an informant. I want to speak to your supervising officer, Tanya said firmly, and I want these handcuffs removed immediately. Officer Daniels laughed. You're not really in a position to be making demands, Ms. Wilson. Actually, I am. You've detained me without probable cause, searched my vehicle without consent or a warrant, and are now attempting to coerce me into providing information about supposed criminal activity that I have no knowledge of. We had reasonable suspicion to stop you, Officer Russo countered. Based on what? The color of my car? Or the color of my skin? Tanya challenged. Officer Daniels's face hardened. Watch yourself, counselor. That's a serious accusation. Yes, it is, Tanya agreed, and I'll be making it formally if this continues. You know, Officer Russo said, his voice dropping to a more menacing tone. We found that watch in your bag. Pretty expensive piece. If we can't verify where it came from, that could be a problem for you. As I told you, it's my brother's watch. I was taking it to be repaired. The receipt is in my wallet. We didn't see any receipt, Officer Daniels said, shrugging. Did you, Russo? Officer Russo shook his head, though Tanya had clearly seen him go through every compartment of her wallet. This is ridiculous, Tanya said, her frustration mounting. You're fabricating evidence. Strong words, Officer Daniels replied, especially from someone who could be facing charges for possession of stolen property. Tanya's mind raced. She needed to get out of this situation, but she also needed to document everything that was happening. Her phone was still recording, in her pocket, capturing the conversation, but that wouldn't help her right now. I want my phone call, she insisted again, and I want these handcuffs removed. I'm not saying another word until both of those things happen. The officers exchanged looks again. Officer Daniels seemed about to say something when the door opened. A middle-aged woman with short gray hair and a captain's uniform stepped into the room. Her nameplate read Captain Rivera. What's going on here? She asked, her gaze taking in the scene. Tanya handcuffed, her belongings scattered across the table. We brought in a suspect matching the description from the West Side robberies, Captain, Officer Daniels explained, standing up. We're just asking some questions. Captain Rivera looked at Tanya. And you are? Tanya Wilson, Captain. I'm an attorney with the Community Legal Aid Center. I was pulled over without cause, detained without being read my rights, and my car was searched without my consent or a warrant. The captain's expression remained neutral, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Have you been charged with anything, Ms. Wilson? No, I haven't. Yet these officers have kept me handcuffed and are threatening me with charges related to a watch they found in my gym bag. A watch that belongs to my brother, which I was taking to be repaired. Captain Rivera turned to the officers. Remove the handcuffs. Officer Daniels hesitated. Captain, we have reason to believe. Remove the handcuffs, officer, she repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. Now. Officer Russo moved behind Tanya and unlocked the cuffs. The relief was immediate as blood flowed freely to her hands again. She rubbed her wrists, noting the red marks where the metal had dug into her skin. Thank you, Captain, Tanya said, maintaining her composure. Officers, I'd like to speak with you outside, Captain Rivera said, gesturing to the door. As they left, Tanya quickly gathered her scattered belongings, putting everything back in her purse. She could hear muffled voices outside the door, the captain's tone sharp and questioning, the officers' replies defensive. A few minutes later, Captain Rivera returned alone, closing the door behind her. Ms. Wilson, I apologize for the treatment you've received tonight, she said, taking a seat across from Tanya. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Tanya repeated, her voice tightly controlled. Captain, with all due respect, what happened tonight goes far beyond a misunderstanding. It was, at best, an abuse of power, and, at worst, racial profiling and attempted blackmail. The captain had the decency to look uncomfortable. Those are serious allegations. Yes, they are, and I intend to file a formal complaint. I also want to know what's going to happen to officers Daniels and Russo. They'll be placed on administrative duty pending an investigation into the incident, Captain Rivera said. I can assure you that we take these matters very seriously. Tanya nodded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. I'd like my phone call. Now. Of course, the captain said, standing up. You're free to use the phone at the front desk. But you should know that you're not under arrest, Ms. Wilson. You're free to go. I appreciate that, Captain. But I still want to make that call. My car is still at the location where I was pulled over, and I need someone to pick me up. Captain Rivera nodded. I'll arrange for an officer to drive you back to your vehicle. I'd prefer to have a friend pick me up if it's all the same to you, Tanya replied. The last thing she wanted was to be alone in a car with another officer from this precinct. As they walked back toward the main area of the station, Tanya felt eyes on her. Officers who had seen her brought in handcuffed were now watching her walk freely alongside their captain. She kept her head high, her expression composed. At the front desk, Captain Rivera instructed the desk sergeant to let Tanya use the phone. Ms. Wilson is not under arrest and is free to go, she emphasized. As the captain walked away, Tanya picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. After 3 rings, A groggy voice answered. "Hello? David, it's Tanya. I'm sorry to wake you, but I need help." She explained the situation briefly, giving him the address of the police station. "I'll be there in 15 minutes, he promised, sounding fully awake now. "Are you okay?" Tanya glanced around at the officers, pretending not to watch her. "I'm fine, but this isn't over. Not by a long shot." As she hung up the phone, she knew one thing for certain. Officers Daniels and Russo had picked the wrong person to harass tonight. They just didn't know it yet. Tanya sat on a hard plastic bench in the police station's waiting area, her posture straight despite her exhaustion. The adrenaline that had kept her alert during the confrontation was beginning to fade, leaving her, drained but determined. She checked her watch. David would arrive any minute now. Around her, the station continued its late-night routine. Officers filed reports, phones rang, and occasional bursts of radio chatter broke the monotony. A few officers glanced her way, curiosity evident in their expressions. Word had clearly spread about the woman who'd been brought in handcuffed, but was now waiting to leave without charges. The front doors swung open and Tanya looked up to see David rushing in. Tall and broad-shouldered with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he scanned the room anxiously until he spotted her. Relief washed over his face as he hurried toward her. "Tanya," he said, his voice thick with concern. "Are you all right?" She stood up, grateful for his solid presence. "I'm okay, just ready to get out of here." David looked her over, noticing the red marks on her wrists. His jaw tightened, but he kept his voice low. "What happened?" "I'll tell you everything in the car," she said, picking up her purse. "Let's go." As they turned to leave, Captain Rivera emerged from a hallway, followed by a tall man in a crisp suit despite the late hour. The captain's expression changed when she saw David. Recognition and then something like concern flashed across her face. "Ms. Wilson," Captain Rivera called out, approaching them. "Before you go, this is Lieutenant Thompson from Internal Affairs. He'd like to speak with you about tonight's incident." Tanya exchanged glances with David, whose slight nod was all the confirmation she needed. "I'll speak with him," she agreed, "but I'd like David to stay with me." The lieutenant extended his hand. "Ms. Wilson, I understand you've had a difficult evening. Would you be willing to give us a statement about what happened?" "I'm David Chen." David introduced himself, shaking the lieutenant's hand. "Chief Counsel for the city's Police Oversight Committee." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Several nearby officers stopped what they were doing, their attention now fixed on the conversation. Captain Rivera's complexion paled slightly. "Mr. Chen," she said, her voice carefully professional, "I wasn't aware you and Ms. Wilson were acquainted." "We've worked together for years," David replied evenly. "Tanya is not only my colleague but also serves as a legal advisor to the Oversight Committee." The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap. Tanya could almost see the mental calculations happening behind Captain Rivera's eyes as she reassessed the situation. What had seemed like a routine case of possible police misconduct had just become a potential department-wide crisis. Lieutenant Thompson cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in my office." They followed him to a small but neat office on the second floor. Unlike the stark interrogation room, this space had personal touches, family photos, a few potted plants, and a bookshelf lined with legal volumes. "Please sit down," he offered, gesturing to chairs across from his desk. "Ms. Wilson, I want to assure you that we take allegations of misconduct very seriously, especially given your position with the Oversight Committee." "My position shouldn't matter," Tanya replied firmly. "What happened tonight would be unacceptable regardless of who I am." "You're absolutely right," Thompson acknowledged, "but I'd be lying if I said it doesn't complicate things." David leaned forward. "What Lieutenant Thompson means is that the department now has a major problem on its hands. Officers Daniels and Russo didn't just racially profile and detain a random black woman. They did it to someone who helps oversee police conduct in this city." Captain Rivera, who had joined them in the office, winced visibly. "Ms. Wilson, I want to personally apologize." "With all due respect, Captain," Tanya interrupted. Apologies aren't enough. I want to know what actions will be taken. That's why I'm here, Thompson said. I'd like to get your full account of what happened from the moment you were pulled over until now. Tanya nodded. I can do better than that. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. I activated my phone's emergency recording function when they put me in the patrol car. It's been recording audio this entire time. The surprise on their faces would have been almost comical under different circumstances. You have a recording? Captain Rivera asked, her voice tight. Yes, Tanya confirmed. From the moment I was placed in the patrol car, through the ride to the station, and the entire interrogation, including when Officers Daniels and Russo threatened to charge me with possession of stolen property, if I didn't give them information about supposed drug dealers in the neighborhood where I work. Thompson's expression grew grave. That's a serious allegation of attempted blackmail. It's not an allegation, David pointed out. If she has it recorded, it's evidence. Tanya placed her phone on the desk. I'm happy to provide a copy of the recording to Internal Affairs. I also intend to file a formal complaint first thing in the morning. Thompson nodded slowly. That would be helpful for our investigation. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me about the incident? Yes, Tanya said, her voice steady. When they first pulled me over, they claimed my car matched the description of one used in recent robberies. But they never specified what those robberies were, or why my car was suspicious beyond being a blue sedan, which describes thousands of vehicles in this city. She continued recounting the events in detail, how they'd handcuffed her without cause, searched her car without consent, and ignored her requests for a lawyer. The more she spoke, the more solemn Thompson's expression became. And this isn't just about me, Tanya concluded. If they did this to someone who knows the law and has connections to the Oversight Committee, imagine what happens to people who don't have those advantages. The room fell silent for a moment as her words sank in. What happens now? David asked, breaking the silence. Thompson straightened some papers on his desk. Officers Daniels and Russo will be placed on administrative leave immediately pending a full investigation. We'll need formal statements from both of you, and we'll review the audio recording as evidence. And if the investigation confirms Ms. Wilson's account, David pressed, then they'll face disciplinary action, possibly termination, and potential criminal charges depending on what the evidence shows, Thompson replied. Captain Rivera, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. Ms. Wilson, I know this doesn't fix what happened, but I want you to know that this is not how officers in my precinct are trained to behave. We're better than this. Tanya met her gaze directly. With all due respect, Captain, tonight's events suggest otherwise. The real test will be what happens after I leave here. Will there be a thorough investigation, or will this be swept under the rug once the immediate pressure is off? I can assure you, Captain Rivera began. No, Tanya cut her off gently but firmly. You can't assure me of anything tonight. Actions will speak louder than words. David checked his watch. It's nearly midnight. Tanya's been through enough tonight. We should continue this tomorrow after she's had some rest. Thompson nodded. Of course. Ms. Wilson, would tomorrow afternoon work for you to give your formal statement? Yes, she agreed, and I'll bring a copy of the recording. As they prepared to leave, Thompson added, one more thing. This investigation will be handled with the utmost discretion, but given your position with the Oversight Committee, there may be media interest if word gets out. David and Tanya exchanged glances. They both knew how these things worked. Someone would leak the story, probably within days. I understand, Tanya said, but my priority isn't media attention. It's making sure what happened tonight never happens to anyone else. They left the station with Captain Rivera escorting them to David's car. The night air felt refreshing after hours in the stuffy police station. Tanya took a deep breath, feeling some of the tension leave her body. Your car is still where you were pulled over, Captain Rivera reminded her. I can have an officer drive you there, or I'll take her, David said firmly, it said. The captain nodded, knowing better than to argue. Good night, then. And again, Ms. Wilson, I'm truly sorry about what happened. As they drove away from the station, Tanya finally allowed herself to relax into the passenger seat. The events of the night played through her mind like a bad movie. You okay? David asked softly, glancing at her. Not really, she admitted, but I will be. They picked the wrong person to mess with, he said, a hint of pride in his voice. Tanya stared out at the city lights. That's the problem, though, isn't it? Most people they do this to aren't on oversight committees. They don't have chief counsels as friends. They don't know to record everything. David nodded solemnly. Which is exactly why we need to make this count. Oh, I intend to, Tanya said, determination hardening her voice. Those officers thought they were holding all the cards tonight. They had no idea who they were dealing with, but now they do, and they're about to lose everything. As they drove through the quiet streets, Tanya made a silent promise to herself and to everyone who had ever been in her position, but lacked her resources. This wouldn't be swept under the rug. This time there would be consequences. Morning sunlight streamed through the blinds of Tanya's apartment as she sat at her kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. She'd barely slept, replaying the previous night's events in her mind. The red marks on her wrist had darkened to bruises, physical reminders of an experience she wouldn't soon forget. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Just saw the morning briefing. Internal Affairs has already started interviews. Thompson is moving fast. She texted back, good. Coming to the office after I give my statement this afternoon. Another message came through almost immediately. Take the day off. Get some rest. Tanya smiled faintly. David knew her too well to think she'd actually stay home. She needed to be active, to channel this experience into something productive. The local news played quietly from her TV in the background. She'd been half listening while reviewing her notes from last night, wanting to make sure she didn't miss any details in her statement. Suddenly, a familiar name caught her attention. Allegations of misconduct against officers Kevin Daniels and Michael Russo. Sources say the officers have been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Tanya turned up the volume. The reporter continued. While the police department has not released an official statement, our sources indicate the allegations involve racial profiling and abuse of power during a traffic stop last night. So it had leaked already. She wasn't surprised, but she hadn't expected it to happen quite so quickly. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from a number she didn't recognize. She let it go to voicemail. Within minutes, 3 more unknown numbers called. The media had somehow gotten her name. Just as she was about to silence her phone, David called. You seeing the news? He asked without preamble. Just caught it, she confirmed. My phone's already blowing up with calls from numbers I don't know. Reporters, David said grimly. Someone at the station leaked your name. I'm reaching out to some contacts to find out who. It doesn't matter, Tanya sighed. It was bound to get out eventually. It matters if it was intentional, David insisted. This could be an attempt to control the narrative or pressure you. Tanya considered this. What do you suggest? Don't talk to any reporters yet. Come to my office before your statement. We need to discuss strategy. 2 hours later, Tanya sat across from David in his spacious office at City Hall. Unlike her modest workspace at the Legal Aid Center, his office featured large windows overlooking the city and walls lined with law books and framed certificates. The audio recording is clear, David said, removing his headphones. He'd been listening to the copy she'd made for him, especially the part where they tried to blackmail you into becoming an informant. This is damning evidence, Tanya. I know, she said quietly. But will it be enough? David leaned back in his chair. Normally, I'd say it would be an uphill battle. Officers like Daniels and Russo often get protected by the system. But this case is different. Because of who I am, Tanya said, a note of bitterness in her voice. Partly, David admitted, but also because of the timing. The Oversight Committee has been investigating complaints against that precinct for months. Your experience fits a pattern we've been seeing. Tanya's eyes widened. You never mentioned that. We couldn't discuss ongoing investigations, David explained. But now your case might be the tipping point. We have over a dozen similar complaints, mostly from people in lower-income neighborhoods who were stopped without cause, intimidated, or had their vehicles searched illegally. And nothing was done? Tanya asked, though she already knew the answer. Individual complaints were dismissed as unsubstantiated, but collectively they show a pattern. Your recording is the first concrete evidence we have. Tanya felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about her anymore. What happens next? She asked. You give your statement to Internal Affairs, David said. Then next week we present all of this to the full oversight committee. If they agree, we recommend a department-wide investigation of that precinct. Tanya nodded, determination settling over her. Let's do it. The Internal Affairs office was located in a separate building from the main police station, a deliberate choice to maintain independence. Lieutenant Thompson greeted Tanya personally when she arrived, leading her to a comfortable interview room that looked nothing like the interrogation room from the previous night. Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming in, he said, gesturing for her to take a seat. I know this isn't easy. A stenographer sat quietly in the corner, ready to record her statement. Thompson placed a recorder on the table between them. For the record, I'm Lieutenant James Thompson, Internal Affairs. The date is Friday, October 15th. This interview is regarding the incident involving Officers Daniels and Russo on October 14th. Ms. Wilson, are you ready to begin? Tanya nodded. Yes. For the next hour, she recounted every detail of the previous night's events, from the moment she was pulled over until her release. Thompson listened attentively, asking clarifying questions but never interrupting her flow. When she finished, he played portions of her audio recording, confirming specific statements and actions. Ms. Wilson, based on your statement and this recording, it's clear that serious violations of department policy occurred, Thompson said finally. Possibly criminal violations as well. What happens to Officers Daniels and Russo now? She asked. They've already been interviewed separately. This morning, Thompson explained. Officer Russo has admitted that there was no actual report of a blue sedan involved in robberies. That was fabricated as a pretext for the stop. Tanya felt a cold anger settle in her stomach. So they targeted me for no legitimate reason. It appears so, Thompson said, his expression grim. Officer Daniels is maintaining that he had reasonable suspicion based on unusual driving patterns, but your recording contradicts that claim since they specifically mentioned robberies when they stopped you. And the attempt to coerce me into becoming an informant? Both officers have denied that characterization of events, but again, the recording speaks for itself. Thompson closed his notebook. Ms. Wilson, I want you to know that I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've never seen such clear evidence of misconduct. As Tanya left the Internal Affairs office, her phone buzzed with a text from David. How did it go? Good, she texted back. Thompson seems genuinely concerned. Says they've already interviewed both officers. His response came quickly. Chief, Wallace wants to meet with us tomorrow morning. Chief Wallace was the head of the entire police department. A meeting with him indicated just how seriously they were taking this situation. The news vans were already parked outside her apartment building when Tanya arrived home. Reporters called out questions as she hurried inside, ignoring them. Once safely in her apartment, she turned on the TV to find her story had expanded to national news. A somber news anchor was saying, raising new questions about police conduct and racial profiling. The woman at the center of the controversy is Tanya Wilson, an attorney who serves on the city's police oversight committee. Her phone rang. Her mother. Baby, are you okay? Her mother asked, concern evident in her voice. I just saw you on the news. I'm fine, Mom, Tanya assured her, just a little overwhelmed. I knew something like this would happen someday, her mother said, her voice a mixture of worry and pride. Ever since you were a little girl standing up to the playground bullies, you never could walk away from an injustice. Tanya smiled at the memory. I learned that from you. After talking with her mother, Tanya checked her email. Dozens of messages had poured in, expressions of support from colleagues, inquiries from journalists, and even a few threatening messages from anonymous accounts defending the officers. She flagged those for her records. One email caught her attention, from a woman named Leticia Rodriguez. "Ms. Wilson, I saw you on the news. The same officers did this to my son last month. No one would listen to us. Please help." As Tanya read through more emails, she discovered 5 similar stories, all involving officers Daniels and Russo, all following the same pattern. She forwarded them to David with a message. "We need to talk to these people before tomorrow's meeting." Morning came quickly. Tanya dressed carefully in her most professional suit, armor for the battle ahead. As she and David walked into police headquarters, heads turned and conversations stopped. Word had spread throughout the department about what was happening. Chief Wallace's office was spacious, with windows overlooking the city and walls decorated with photos of him with various politicians and community leaders. He stood as they entered, a tall man with silver hair and the confident bearing of someone used to command. "Ms. Wilson, Mr. Chen," he greeted them, gesturing to seats across from his desk. "Thank you for coming." Captain Rivera was also present, along with Lieutenant Thompson and a woman Tanya didn't recognize. "This is Patricia Lawson, our department's legal counsel," Chief Wallace explained, noticing Tanya's questioning glance. The presence of a lawyer confirmed the seriousness of the situation. "Ms. Wilson," the chief began, "I've reviewed your statement and the audio recording. I've also seen the Internal Affairs preliminary report. I want to personally apologize for the treatment you received at the hands of officers under my command." Tanya nodded but remained silent, waiting for more than just words. "I've called this meeting to inform you of the actions we're taking," he continued. "Officers Daniels and Russo have been suspended without pay, pending the completion of the investigation. Based on the evidence already gathered, I expect termination proceedings to begin next week." David leaned forward. "And the potential criminal charges?" Chief Wallace looked to the department's lawyer, who spoke for the first time. "We've forwarded the case to the district attorney's office with a recommendation to pursue charges of official oppression, attempted blackmail, and civil rights violations." Tanya exchanged glances with David. This was more than they had expected. "There's something else you should know," Tanya said, opening her briefcase. "Since the story broke, I've received emails from 5 other individuals who report similar experiences with these same officers. I've verified their accounts and believe they're credible." She handed copies of the emails to everyone present. The room fell silent as they read. Chief Wallace's face grew increasingly grave. "This suggests a pattern of behavior that may extend beyond these 2 officers." "Exactly," David said, "which is why the Oversight Committee will be recommending a department-wide investigation of the entire precinct." Captain Rivera paled visibly. "My entire precinct?" "The evidence suggests these officers felt comfortable behaving this way," Tanya explained. "That raises questions about the culture and supervision in the precinct." The meeting continued for another hour as they discussed next steps. By the time they left, Tanya felt cautiously optimistic. For once, it seemed the system might actually work the way it was supposed to. Outside, reporters had gathered, shouting questions as they emerged from the building. David shielded Tanya as they made their way to his car. "No comment at this time," he repeated firmly. Once inside the car, Tanya took a deep breath. "Do you think anything will really change?" David started the engine. "Because of you, 2 bad officers are off the streets. That's already something." "It's not enough," Tanya said, looking out at the city she'd dedicated her career to serving. "But it's a start." 3 months had passed since that night when Tanya Wilson's life had collided with officers Daniels and Russo. The winter chill had settled over the city, but inside the crowded community center, the atmosphere was warm and charged with purpose. Tanya stood at the podium, looking out at the diverse faces filling every seat. Community members, activists, police officers, city officials, and reporters packed the room. A banner hung on the wall behind her. Community Policing Reform Initiative, Building Trust Together. 6 months ago, this initiative was just an idea on paper. Tanya began, her voice clear and confident. Today it's becoming reality because of everyone in this room, especially those who bravely shared their stories when no one seemed to be listening. In the front row sat 5 people who had come forward after Tanya's story made headlines. Ordinary citizens who had experienced similar treatment from the same officers. Beside them sat David Chen and Lieutenant Thompson, now promoted to captain, after his thorough investigation had uncovered a pattern of misconduct that went beyond just 2 officers. What happened to me that night was wrong, Tanya continued. But it wasn't unique. For years, certain officers operated as if some neighborhoods and some citizens had fewer rights than others. That ends now. The journey to this moment had been neither quick nor easy. The weeks following her detention had been a whirlwind of activity. The internal investigation had expanded beyond Officers Daniels and Russo to include supervision practices at the precinct. Both officers had been terminated, and criminal charges were pending against them for civil rights violations and attempted blackmail. More significantly, Captain Rivera had been demoted for failing to properly supervise her officers, and 3 other officers from the same precinct had been suspended when the investigation revealed similar patterns of misconduct. But the biggest shock came when Chief Wallace announced his early retirement, amid growing criticism of department-wide policies that had enabled such behavior. His replacement, Chief Gloria Washington, sat in the audience today, the first Black woman to lead the city's police department and a respected veteran officer known for her commitment to community policing. I want to be clear about something, Tanya said, gripping the edges of the podium. This initiative isn't about being anti-police. It's about making sure policing works the way it's supposed to, protecting and serving everyone equally, regardless of what neighborhood they live in or what they look like. She gestured toward a group of officers in uniform who sat together near the back of the room. Some nodded in agreement while others remained expressionless. Many officers do their jobs with integrity every day. They deserve our respect and support. But a system that protects those who abuse their power hurts everyone, including good officers whose reputation and trust with the community are damaged by the actions of a few. In the months since the incident, Tanya had received hundreds of messages, some supportive, others hateful. She'd been called a hero by some and an opportunist by others. Death threats had forced her to temporarily move and beef up security at her office, but she had refused to back down. What had begun as a personal ordeal had evolved into a mission. The Oversight Committee's investigation had expanded, uncovering similar patterns in other precincts. The City Council, facing public pressure, had allocated funding for body cameras for all officers and created a new civilian review board with actual enforcement power. Today we're announcing 3 major changes, Tanya explained, holding up one finger. First, a new training program for all officers focused on implicit bias and de-escalation techniques. She raised a second finger. Second, a community liaison, officer for every neighborhood in our city, selected with input from residents. A third finger joined the others. And third, a transparent complaint process that gives citizens real-time updates on investigations into police misconduct. In the audience, Leticia Rodriguez, one of the first people to contact Tanya after seeing her story on the news, wiped away tears. Her teenage son had been detained without cause by the same officers 6 months earlier, but no one had taken their complaint seriously until now. None of this would have happened without the courage of those who spoke up, Tanya acknowledged, making eye contact with Leticia. When I was handcuffed in that interrogation room, I felt powerless despite knowing my rights and having connections. Imagine how it feels for someone without those advantages. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the audience. But I also want to acknowledge those within the police department who helped bring about change, she continued. Captain Thompson, whose thorough investigation followed the evidence wherever it led. Chief Washington, who has embraced these reforms since taking office. And the many officers who have privately shared their own concerns about colleagues who tarnished their badge. Chief Washington nodded from her seat, her expression serious but supportive. After the presentation, people mingled in small groups, sharing refreshments and conversation. Tanya found herself surrounded by well-wishers and those eager to share their own stories. Eventually, she made her way to a quiet corner where David was chatting with Captain Thompson. "Impressive turnout," David commented, handing her a cup of coffee. "More than we expected," Tanya agreed, taking a grateful sip. The past months had been exhausting, and caffeine had become a necessary companion. "You've started something important." "Here," Captain Thompson said, his voice low. "But you should know. There's still resistance within the department. Not everyone is happy about these changes." "I'd be surprised if there wasn't resistance," Tanya replied. "Change never comes easy, especially when it challenges power." "The DA's office called this morning," David told her. "Daniels and Russo have been offered a plea deal. They'll serve time, but not as much as they might have if the case went to trial." Tanya nodded slowly. She had mixed feelings about the criminal case. While she wanted accountability, she was more focused on systemic change than individual punishment. "What matters is that they can't do this to anyone else," she said finally. As the event wound down, Tanya found herself approached by a young officer she didn't recognize. He seemed nervous, glancing around as if to ensure no one was watching. "Ms. Wilson," he said quietly, "I just wanted to say, what you're doing is important. There are more of us who think so than you might believe." Before she could respond, he walked away, rejoining his colleagues across the room. It was a small moment, but it gave her hope that change was possible, even from within the department. Later that evening, Tanya sat alone in her apartment, finally allowing herself to feel the emotional weight of everything that had happened. The news played quietly in the background, a story about the new police reforms featuring clips from today's event. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. "So proud of you, baby." Dad would have been too. Tears welled in her eyes at the mention of her father, who had passed away 5 years earlier. He had been the one who first encouraged her to become a lawyer, to use the law as a tool for justice. Another text came through, this one from Letitia. "My son smiled today when he saw a police car in our neighborhood. First time in months, thank you." That single message made all the hardship worthwhile. Tanya walked to her window, looking out at the city lights glimmering against the night sky. The work was far from over. Policies could be changed on paper, but changing hearts and minds, both within the police department and in the community, would take longer. Trust, once broken, wasn't easily rebuilt, yet something fundamental had shifted. People who had previously suffered in silence now had a voice and a platform. Officers who had wanted to speak up about misconduct now had channels to do so safely. The power balance had begun to change. Her phone rang, David calling. "You saw the news?" he asked when she answered. "Just catching it now," she replied, turning up the volume on her TV. "The governor's office called. They want to use our reforms as a model for a statewide initiative. They're asking if you'd consult on the project." Tanya felt a wave of emotion. Not pride exactly, but a sense of purpose. What had happened to her that night had been traumatic, but it had also become a catalyst for change far beyond anything she could have imagined. "Tell them I'm interested," she said, watching as her own image appeared on the screen, speaking passionately about equal justice. "You've become the face of this movement," David observed. "How does that feel?" Tanya considered the question carefully. "It feels like responsibility," she answered finally. "What happened to me was wrong, but it happens to people every day who don't have the platform I do. I can't walk away from that." After they hung up, Tanya continued watching the coverage. The reporter was interviewing Chief Washington about the new initiatives. "These reforms aren't just about fixing what's broken," the new chief was saying. "They're about building something better, a relationship between police and community based on mutual respect and trust." Tanya nodded to herself. It was a good soundbite, but the real test would be in the implementation, in the daily interactions between officers and citizens, in the handling of complaints, in the accountability when things went wrong. As she turned off the TV and prepared for bed, Tanya thought about Officers Daniels and Russo. They had seen her only as a target that night, never imagining that their actions would lead to their downfall and spark a movement for change. They had handcuffed her, threatened her, and tried to intimidate her, thinking they held all the power. They couldn't have been more wrong. In trying to silence one voice, they had ultimately amplified thousands. In abusing their authority against one person, they had triggered reforms that would protect countless others. In targeting Tanya Wilson, they had lost everything: their jobs, their freedom, and their power to harm others. And that, Tanya thought as she drifted off to sleep, was justice in its own way.